that was published in Feb of this year, which kind of laid out use cases into four main buckets. The four main buckets were first, AI content generation. So this is the very generation of, the genesis of ChatGPT and things like code generation and text generation. The second one is AI content discovery, which is really around knowledge management, so the RAGs, etc., come into there and come into play there. And then also smart search, like AI mode recently launched by Google, right? Third big category is conversational AI. So both front end prospecting as an example, and also back end servicing across verticals. And the fourth one, very interesting and evolving right now, is AI simulations, which is really around, as an example, synthetic data. So how do you generate unbiased data sets to power even traditional AI use cases or scenario planning, right? And the underlying backdrop of all of this is that responsible AI is becoming very important, both from a guardrails perspective, static and in production. And some of the panelists will speak through that. Some key market data I just want to share. By 2025, about 50% of the board of directors in the top 500 companies in the world will be using Gen AI in some form and manner. This is up from just 1% in 2022. And then by 2027, this is all from the Gartner report, 30% of all knowledge workers' tasks will be done with Gen AI, and this was roughly 0% in 2023. Right? So that's just got a little bit of a structure, and let's jump right into it. Our first panelist is Archana Patabi, who's a SVP of Personal Banking and Wealth Management, LOB, and a strong governance and compliance expert. So the question for Archana is in the direction of, when we think about data strategy, governance, and risk in agentic AI, what are some of the best practices and what are you seeing as a practitioner? Go ahead, Archana.
Maybe Archana, you are on mute, please, I think.
All right, sorry. Okay, that was a fantastic start. Okay, greetings everyone. Thank you for joining from all the parts of the world. We are spread across different geographies. And thank you, Aditya, for imperative and a timely topic about agentic AI, risk and compliance, and to 3AI for giving us this platform to speak about the emerging technologies in AI, share our knowledge and share our challenges and how we are moving forward with these new innovations in technology. Okay, and I would thank again Aditya for actually asking me this question first, because that's the entire point, because you need to first have your data governance as a strong foundation for AI to be successfully adopted across your organization, right? So when it comes to my background, I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. I've worked in several Fortune 500 companies, and I'm predominantly in the technology transformation and risk and compliance space. So when it comes to agentic AI, this is, we had robotic process automation for a long time, but agentic AI adds the new flavor where autonomously these models are able to carry on tasks, automate a process, and also go through a reinforcement learning on their own and take on the next step of actions. So when we look at the entire landscape here, the first and foremost thing we need to concentrate on is, what am I feeding into these agents? How can I make these agents successful? So that goes down to understanding your digital ecosystem and creating an asset inventory, you understanding, like, where are all your assets? When I say assets, like how your applications, how your tech stack is, and having an inventory of all of these, and understanding the dependencies between the applications of how they are connected to each other, how they are rolling, and how the data is flowing in between these systems. What are your critical data elements? And when we talk about easier organization talking about a common language? Are we both talk when I say account number, do you mean the account number in the same way, or is it something else in your application, right? So identifying the metadata, getting through the data lineage between all these systems, that is imperative for your AI adoption to be successful. And the next step I would talk about is these models are very autonomous, as I've mentioned, and they need to be uh, they are doing a reinforcement learning as well and taking on the next course of action. So we not only we should be able to trace back to how these models have come to a certain output, we should also be able to explain that. So, as they say in the AI world, the fast steps principles need to be followed here, where we are talking about the fairness, accountability, sustainability, security, transparency. Following ethics in these models, in development of these models, and the privacy aspects of it, right? So the entire fast steps principles need to be followed for these models to be sustainable, and then monitor these models, how they are doing, how they are performing, and um, make it agile so that you're in a cycle where you should be able to adapt quickly, whether it is in alignment with your business goals or it is going haywire. The more guardrails we put across in this process, the more successful we are with agentic AI. And I would say um, we need to definitely like automate. There is no point in doing mundane tasks, but at the same time we should be able to explain how we have come to a certain output and feed the models with the right foundational data, so that we are successful in our outcome. So in a nutshell, I would say have don't treat governance and regulations as um, constraint or as like as showstoppers for you. In fact, they're enabling you to be successful. That's how I would conclude on this question, Aditya.
Thank you. Just adding a one or two liner. I think the having golden data sets, whether those are specific to testing business use cases or standardized, for example, in model risk management, you want to have certain validation data sets or specifically fair lending compliance data sets and things of that nature, which are then standardized across different use cases, also very important
Yeah.
as part of the overall governance and compliance framework. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. Let's move on to the second panelist. We have Mohan Kilariwal, who is a senior leadership AI consultant, and he will speak through, and look forward to your opinion here, will speak through implementing Gen AI and agentic AI at scale from a strategy perspective for senior management. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. So I think, see, we need to look at in key 3-4 areas, right? Well, we're looking to implement the Gen AI or any AI initiative in any organization, right? One is related to the key technologies and the platform that which we are looking to utilize, right? The second one would be creating a right kind of team, right, in place, right, which is more or less like the COE kind of thing, right, the center of excellence, or a group of people who would be basically driving those kind of initiatives. And the third part is basically identifying the right use cases, right. Then use cases would be probably the business problems which one to work on, right. So let me get into the key technologies areas, right, which any organization needs to basically think of, right, when we are moving to Gen AI. Now, if you look at, we can divide, basically think of multiple areas like the foundation model, right? Depending upon the organization, one need to look into this, what kind of models they would be useful for that particular industry, right, or particular organization. And there could be set of lot of models out there, right, which needs to be tried out depending upon the business scenario, depending upon the cost involved into it, right? Depending on the other resources available with that, right? That needs to be chosen out very appropriately, right? And the other part is the ML of platform, right? Now there are various industries which are very mature in terms of having all those kind of platforms, right, and these sort of tools available with them, right? So they can basically go and try to see that if they can reuse all the existing technology stack which is already there, rather than getting and investing into something new, right, which needs to be right, because that will help them to basically save some cost, right? And in terms of the capability, right, they would be already having that kind of capability. So organization need to look at the reusability of those kind of platforms, right? So that would be very appropriate rather than investing into something new altogether, until unless it will become very essential or very necessary, right? All those kind of things. There could be other kind of thing like the, if you look at the from the AI point of view, there could be a very specific kind of databases, right? The vector databases or the knowledge graphs, which are very much very pertinent and very useful for the AI use cases, where there is a lot of information which needs to be utilized intermittently, right? For example, right, the traditional databases would be of no use in that sense, right? From the model point of view to process that information, right? So the vector database utilization and knowledge graph to the other areas which needs to be looked into, right, from the organization point of view. And again, if you look go from the going into the agentic AI space, now that comes the agent framework, which is very new into the industry now, right? It's still evolving. I would not say that all the agent frameworks which are there out in the market are mature enough, but yes, they are evolving over a period of time, right? So I think the organization need to look into that aspect as well, right? So which are the agent frameworks which would be useful for them, right?
Sure.
Looking at the industries and all, right? So they can orchestrate the entirely and manage the entire agent flow, the workflow, right? More appropriately, and then have the right kind of guardrails around it, right? Technically, at least, so that they can very much control the flow of the agent and the working of the agents, right? So that like you can say the Microsoft is having the AutoGen, right? You have the Crew AI and all those kind of, and the large basically would be the cloud infrastructure. Now, cloud is something which is not necessarily all the organization would be happy to use, in my experience, especially in the AI part, right? A lot of industries are little apprehensive about going and using the models into the cloud. But this is I would say, one of the very key aspect, because AI requires a lot of computing power available with you, right? And in the initial stages, right, when you are doing little research, right, you are just evaluating how you want to structure your entire infrastructure, right, your entire technology stack, right. It is very difficult for any organization to have all those kind of high computing power available to them, right. So they would look into to I think that's a better approach, to look into the cloud infrastructure available, evaluate out there, right, whatever possible infra is there, and then take a call, I would say, that whether they want to basically have their own infrastructure available, or it's a cloud is a better way to go at, right?
And
And
could
that,
you encapsulate kind of the final comments on this, Mohan? Just
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So that's how it is. I would like to, right now. I will just probably move on. Do I have your time?
I
Yeah.
think you are at time. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
So
can just add one liner that we are seeing in the market is, having agentic AI do all of it by themselves, having the agents being able to work autonomously versus having scripted responses.
yeah.
You're finding a lot of that in regulated verticals versus completely having the agent run it by itself. So
Right.
but that's a double click on a topic we'll do in the
Right.
future.
Right. Right.
The
Right.
third panel, thank you. Third panelist is Divya Unikrishnan, who's an analytics strategy expert and has implemented projects at scale. So really from a perspective of planning and change management, what are some of the best practices you're seeing? Divya, take it forward.
Yeah, thank you, Aditya, and happy to be part of this panel. So yeah, so like any generative AI, any project, right? I think there are some three key areas which needs to be taken care of when you're thinking of adoption within an organization, right? So right from and we usually follow a very phased approach of making sure that those immediate wins are being balanced with the long-term transformations. So in this case, there'll be both from a top-down approach versus a bottom-up approach. From a top-down approach is basically, ensuring that the vision is aligned to your business strategic objectives, ensuring the leadership buy-in is there, so that there are sponsors within the leadership, and they are able to sort of communicate this vision across the entire organization, and also ensuring that communication and those awareness is created within an organization. That's mainly from the top down approach. Now, coming to the bottom up approach is some of the topics which Archana and Mohan were covering, right? Right from getting the data foundation in place, right? That data strategy, data governance layer in place. Then having that technical infrastructure in place, having your cloud platforms, having your compute powers. Then also having the talent and the skilling of people, right? I think that's one crucial thing which needs to be taken care of by enterprises. Basically, how do you sort of upskill your workforce, right? And also, finally, it's basically the culture within that organization. Are people ready for this change? Are people ready for this innovation? Are there any apprehensions within the organizations? So these are the areas which I think when you are sort of looking into any agentic AI, generative AI, when you sort of think about implementing that within that organization, these are few key areas which has to be taken care of. Back to you, Aditya.
Thank you. I think one part that I have seen is in the risk reward framework, not all use cases have the same risk. And so when you almost have to look at a risk adjusted reward mindset when you think about ROI. So for example, in a customer servicing mindset, in a regulated vertical, let's say like insurance, the risk bar is very high in terms of litigation or so on and so forth. So you might want to be very careful in terms of the guardrails and effort that you put into guardrails there, and what outcomes you desire, the level of automation. You might not have that high level of automation those, and in other scenarios like in a sales prospecting environment, you could be a lot more freewheeling, because technically potentially your risk frameworks could be lower, your risk thresholds could be lower, so you have more opportunity to kind of push something directly with LLM facing the end prospect, so on and so forth, right? So those are also risk reward trade-offs that have to be done. All right, moving on. So the fourth panelist is Raghu Tumuluri, and thank you. You're an expert in technology to build scalable architectures, and would love to get your opinion on how do we fit agentic AI systems in existing tech ecosystems so they don't clash, but they work in harmony. Take it away.
Yep. Thanks, Aditya. Hey, panelists, pleased to meet you all. The very first thing is keep it simple and kind of a straightforward to start with, especially when you're exploring something new, right? It's growing. So start simple, identify straightforward use cases like customer support automation or the appointment scheduling and kind of things like that, and establish clear KPIs in terms of, like you said, Aditya, right? It's the risk versus reward. Having the business processes really mapped out with clear swim lanes, handoffs, identify those repetitive tasks and what are some of the decision points that agentic AI can handle with or without the human intervention, a human in the loop, sort of a thing. Be really selective in implementing like modular and microservices architecture. So microservices is really critical, right, to scale this agentic AI, but at the same time, it is really costly, cumbersome. I mean, we can't really chunk a massive ERP into microservices and implement it, right? It's not realistic. So we have to be really selective in what is the target for the modular and microservices architecture that can independently scale, have the agility, be able to do rapid innovation, and keeping it tightly coupled as well. The hybrid approach, I've seen good success because you're not boiling the ocean to start with on day one, but you're taking baby steps and realizing the value, showing the value, like Divya and Mohan and Archana said. Some of the things are really important, right? The organization needs to see the value behind this. It's not the management pushing, but the organization reaping the benefits, quick wins, is the most important thing. Utilizing the cloud native and hybrid infrastructures is really good. It gives the flexibility and also ensures the infrastructure scalability with adequate computational kind of resources compared to 100% on-prem. rigid applications. So there's a balance there. We have to have kind of a data engineering practices in place. So there's a ton of legacy systems all over the companies, right? The organizations. The best approach is identify, pick tools like Apache Kafka, for example. It can really build effective data pipelines, the whole ETL to really drive, convert the unstructured to structured data and be valuable for AI agents to consume the data, because data is the king. Without the data, no matter what we do, it just falls apart. Employee data warehouses, that way is you are kind of massaging the data and having clean, complete data there. And like Moon said, like embrace the ML ops culture to standardize and govern the AI ML life cycle. So you actually see the whole DevOps in working. And of course, the organizations have to have a kind of a strong DevOps mindset in place. And then introduce the distributed training and inference, kind of to expedite model training and enable kind of real-time inference at scale, because that's really important for the AI agents to learn over the period of time and really get better in things. The collaboration between business, data scientists, engineers, etc., it needs to be high, and the gaps needs to be really limited. So that way they can synergize in terms of what the organization wants to achieve, and work towards that common goal. It's like a beehive model, right? And like Divya alluded, right, the organizational readiness is super important. If the organization doesn't know the decisions that management is making in terms of, hey, yeah, we're going to roll out agentic AI, what is it? We don't know how it's going to fit in. We don't know, where in that business process the agentic AI is going to come in and then do these automated tasks for us. We don't know. So it's important to give organizational change management a huge seat in this whole thing, so they help understand, digest what's in it for the organization at all levels of the organization. That way, the change is effectively implemented and managed.
Yep. I think these are all great points. And I can add one thing from my practical experience, that especially in the mid-market where building from ground up scratch is not an option, we're seeing a lot of adoption of secure enterprise grade AI, Gen AI platforms, like especially from ServiceNow or even Salesforce, where you can launch something, you can take in your data in a secure manner, make it available. For example, if you had no, you were supporting internal wealth manager, you supporting wealth managers through an agent assist model. You could have pricing data and kind of frequently asked questions being made available, or standardized advice being made available through these toolkits from where you can actually go build it. And it's very powerful, where you can launch something without having to worry about the entire ecosystem, compute, the frontier models, etc. Right? So rapid adoption, especially for mid-market institutions, regulated or non-regulated, using toolkits from Salesforce and ServiceNow is a one way to get going quickly. And we are seeing that where a lot of these components are made available to you, and you can populate and kind of launch in 2 to 3 months, launch a use case with sufficient guardrails in play. All right, our last panel, thank you. Our last panelist is Dr. Deepak Narayan, who's a regulated vertical banking insurance expert, and is actually seeing impact of LLM pipelines. So take it away.
Thank you, Aditya, and nice to be here. Good day, everyone. So I have been in the bank financial services practice for more than 2 decades, and I have seen the from the scratch, like as we called analytics and data, and then data science, machine learning, AI, and now we're talking about Gen AI, Agentic AI. The whole evolution, we have seen it. And also I had the privilege of working across the geographies. Right now I'm in Africa, but I have worked in Europe, US, and Asia. So I think it's an evolution, actually, thinking about how the research to the practice, putting into practice. It's two questions we'll always have: how and why. I think most of the times we talk about how, which tools, what tools, this, that, like in terms of all of that, right? The new age technologies, but why we have to use it. I mean, that's where the question is more around what is the value to the organization, particularly around the AI or even the basic level analytics, business intelligence, all of that. If you look put together, I think it has to drive value. So usually in organizations, you will see in 3 or 4 dimensions of the value, right? Revenue generation is a core to any organization, and the other one is the cost reduction, and you can see the customer experience, because everyone deals with either B2C or B2B customers, and then you have the regulatory requirements and risk mitigations and all of that. So if you look at all these, 4 or 5 dimensions where this whole agentic AI fit in, the most important one is around the understanding of the requirements. Particularly, I feel that we do a lot of POCs, we keep on doing POCs and experimenting and all that, but I think now is the time to really impact the customers, impact the regulators, impact the P&L and the organization. So you have to start small, but obviously you have to scale it rapidly. So that's where I think this whole agentic AI frameworks will help. You can start in a small fashion, but you can easily scale it. Take a simple example of we have been talking about recommendation engines for so many decades, like Amazon's recommender engine or any of these. How you can convert that into an agentic AI framework, looking at the every customer is valuable, whether it is wealth customer or premium customer or normal customer. Any customer in any context is valuable to the organization. How you can actually use this agentic AI to look at the whole spectrum of, you can call it as customer 360, whatever we have been talking about, that customer centric in the world. But I think this is the time to really converge all of that, whatever we have been talking, customer centricity, data driven, customer driven, all that to put into practice. We should be able to do that, help the customers, right? That is the end goal, help the customers and make the money. Similarly, you look at the other dimensions, in the same context, fraud and all of these, money laundering. It's a big problem in banking and financial services. That's where again is a real-time interventions are required. In many industries, it may not be so required, real-time interventions, but in particularly when it comes to money, it's our money. Why we are here, to earn money and to make money, right? So when it comes to the money, everybody is skeptical, they are scared and all that. So you need a real-time interventions there, and that's where we see a lot of applications. I'm just trying to dissect, like the few, very high profiled use cases, or where you can make real impact to the customers and also real impact to the business, to the bottom line. Obviously, there is a lot of experimentation still going on. It's evolving. If you look at the Gartner's maturity model, AI maturity model, we are still not there, even in the halfway through. Most of the organizations, even I would say, even the data maturity model, is not even there up to third level or fourth level, right? There are 5 levels in the data maturity. AI level, you have like 5, 6 levels. Most of the organizations are talking about the level 6, level 5, where they don't have the foundations, like Archana mentioned, data strategy, data governance, metadata, reference, all of that is a foundation, to get the final outcome. So obviously, to me, I think what it is, the next level is obviously, let's not go the hype, but I think we should look at the value and focus value, where it will generate the value, and pick the real use cases, real problem solving. It's end of the day, all these tools and technologies should be solving the problems, the real problems to the organizations, to the customers, to the stakeholders, shareholders. End of the day, shareholders are also very important. We have to solve their problem in terms of making money to the organizations. That's where I feel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll add one specific example. So there's a BNPL player called Klarna, and they're kind of been a headline example because they're public. So they've been sharing quite a bit of information around adoption of Gen AI, in this example in buy now, pay later. And it's interesting that they took down their headcount by roughly about 50%, if I remember my numbers right, with no impact to end customer NPS. So that's pretty powerful, right? and they consider this as religion, and they're kind of going to continue down this path. So I think in those 4 buckets that I laid out, the conversational AI bucket is where we're seeing a lot of adoption. Not yet where the LLMs are fully directly working with prospects or customers, but in an agent assist manner. Those are seeing a lot of impact and a lot of adoption in regulated verticals. And the other area is this creation of these unbiased data sets. The data sets by nature, whether it's insurance or telecom or financial services, tend to have a lot of legacy biases in the data, and we won't have time to have to double click into it. But being able to create synthetic data sets in that 4th category called AI simulation, being able to create synthetic data sets is kind of very interesting. All right, I think we are almost at time, but I had one question for everybody on the panel, and one person could take that one up. What does responsible AI mean to you, and how important is it in the in the current adoption and success of Gen AI? Maybe somebody from the panel can just take a crack at it, and then we can end the
AI.
session. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say I will just pick up from your example, Aditya, where you said about the data, right? If you look at the regulated industries, for example, the banking or the insurance, now the responsible AI here comes in the sense that every geography, every country is having a different kind of, little bit of different kind of regulations around those data and all, right? So I'm not sure what is happening right now. If you look at all those data, the foundations models, whatever we are using, are trained on the generic data, a global data, right? Those are not very specifically. If you look at in the traditional sense, all the rule engines and all, whatever has been created, even in the fraud management and all, those rules being tweaked according to regulations of the specific geography and all, right? Those being handled accordingly, right? So I think the similar when we move into the AI, those kind of things need to be taken care of. Probably we will require more specific and customized model around to deal with such kind of specific scenarios or specific geography, and that will make it more of a responsible AI, I would say, in my sense, right? Having catering to the needs of the specific areas of regulation of the geography for the geography, and then using the AI for that. That is one part of responsible AI. I think that has to be there right now. I do not see it, at least in my experience so far, that is happening. We are trying to use more of a standard kind of model in all those scenarios.
I think thank you everybody for joining at different time zones. Appreciate that. This has been a good kind of 5-dimensional perspective on different aspects, right? From compliance governance to data sets to responsible AI to distributed architecture. And then, as Divya explained, how do you go about implementing this in large organizations with strong controls on change management? Appreciate your time. Thank you.